All right, hello everybody. My name is Lindsay Martinez. I'm a host on the Conservation Relevancy community site. And today we are here to learn about the wrap up of a pilot Relevancy Roadmap pilot project with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. And we've got two agency staff here today. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. So I'm Fallon Owens. I am the Extension Wildlife Biologist with the agency. And Kevin?
And I'm Kevin Dockendorf. I'm a fisheries biologist with the agency, and appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you. So could you guys just first give us a little reminder about what pilot project North Carolina took on?
Sure. So I'll give a brief description, and I just want to throw it out there. There's several other people who did a lot of this work. It wasn't just Kevin and I, but we actually have a Partnership for Inclusion, which is a grassroots group of people at the Wildlife Commission that have put in this work. So by all means, many thanks go to the other people who participated. But what we did was focusing on workshops for both our agency staff, and also we had a sort of student mentorship type workshop that we focused on. So a total of 3 workshops that we organized and put on all of February in 2021, although it took a lot longer to plan those out. So the first 2 workshops were focused on our agency staff, and one of them was geared towards teaching staff about the role that wildlife management agencies play in the broader sort of context of wildlife conservation. What is a constituency? What are our responsibilities under the public trust doctrine? So that was a focus of one workshop. The second staff workshop focused on internal diversity and inclusion. Who are we as an agency? How diverse are we? How inclusive are we as a workplace? And then again, that third workshop was focused on college and university students who are potentially interested in a career in conservation, with a special focus on underrepresented people, like people underrepresented in our agency. So racial minorities, ethnic minorities, and that kind of thing. So that was our intended audience for the student workshop.
Awesome. And I know you guys have already shared sort of a final report about your project. Could you tell us a little bit more about what people can find in there and how that could help them with a similar project?
For sure. First warning is, I think it's 104 pages, but most of that is appendices. So the actual report is only, I think, 11 or 12 pages. So by all means, if anybody decides to open up the document, don't get too scared that it's incredibly long. Most of it are supporting documents that were added to the end. But let's see, we talk about a lot of the challenges that we faced. COVID obviously plays a huge role in our report because, like everybody else, we did not anticipate dealing with a global pandemic when we applied for this grant. So we talk about the specific challenges that we faced with COVID, but we also talk about other challenges that we dealt with in terms of just communicating our intentions for these workshops to our senior leadership, to the participants, trying to figure out how to put these workshops on in a most effective way possible. So we went with third-party vendors. So the first staff workshop, we used the Wildlife Management Institute, which sort of facilitated that workshop pro bono as part of the grant, which was amazing. And then for the second workshop, we employed the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies Management Assistance team to put on that workshop. And that allowed the workshops to be a little bit separated and a little bit less biased than if our staff had tried to do those workshops. We talk about the fact that doing the workshops virtually, which we had to do because of the pandemic, we really think, and the evaluations that we actually did for participants, there's good evidence that was a really a big stumbling block, because these are really sensitive topics, and in order to get into the meat of these sticky issues, like how do we define our constituency, how do we define our role, being in person and being able to be in sort of a safe environment where what happens in this room stays in this room is really a vital part of really getting somewhere with these workshops. So we did the best we could virtually, but ideally in the future, we would definitely recommend having something like that in person. So let's see, we did get one of the important points that came out was that most of the participants that said anything about it in terms of are the right people here in this workshop, a lot of people said, why are our senior staff not participating in this workshop? So that's something we'll look at in the future. It's definitely, it can't be a just lower level education opportunity or upper level education opportunity. The broader representation of staff that get introduced to these ideas and educated about how complicated relevancy, diversity, inclusion are, the more effective the agency as a whole can be in actually moving forward toward a common purpose. Let's see, what am I missing here? That was very specific to the workshops that we did, but in general, I think lessons that we learned that we talk about in the report involve that, this is a long process, and this is just the starting point for us. We're going to be taking what we learned from these workshops and planning other workshops in the future. So what didn't work, we're going to try to change. What did work, we're going to try to replicate, so that, this is not a one-off. We're going to try to continue with these workshops in the future repeatedly so we can get as many of our employees sort of educated on these topics as we can. So no expectation that this one grant can solve our agency's issue with relevancy, but an understanding that this is a long process and that it takes continual effort. And we just have to get started in order to get where we want to be in the end. So, Kevin, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, you did a great job, Fallon, to highlight those, and I'll just echo that it is a long process, and the opportunity to get started is really the catalyst. I think the relevancy provided that were presented to us with the pandemic, staff related issues from diverse work groups and interpretations of our plan, and how that was to work. And then with the third workshop and working with students, thing goes that the in-person may have been better for some really in-depth ways of use or learning about students, or students learning about professionals. One silver lining with the pandemic and everyone learning virtual meetings and those opportunities is we were able to reach beyond North Carolina. We reached 7 universities within the state, which North Carolina is about 560 miles wide, and I can't remember how deep it is, but we also reached universities to San Antonio. We had one student from UC Davis, University of California, Davis, and Tennessee Tech, and 7 others, I think, outside of the North Carolina. So really, the reach was quite extensive by expanding that. And I'll also emphasize what Fallon mentioned about third-party vendors. I think it comes to say with the student mentor workshop, it was important to bring in that audience and what they were dealing with, and then also academia and professionals to kind of work together to learn more about what the needs were currently in that current frame, and also adaptability. Adapting to the situation, breakout rooms, opportunities that we might not have had in person per se. But all in all, a great opportunity to learn together. And Fallon also mentioned all the other people that are associated with this. And I think that's also big about us being adaptable to a network of people to work together, to find common grounds, potential solutions, and help each other out when things got a little tough.
Support is really important. It's tough work. There's a lot of resistance in that we encountered in surprising places within our agency. Just lack of familiarity with these topics, lack of understanding of really what our goals are. And so it is really important to not only try to find support wherever it could be found, from the lower levels at the grassroots sort of level, and from senior leadership, sort of getting support from both sides, the top and the bottom, we found to be really helpful, but also just emotional support, like knowing that it wasn't just one person's job to work on this, but there's a network of people that we could rely on to get the work done, and also just to take breaks when we needed, to commiserate when things got frustrating. So it's really emotionally challenging work as well as just logistically challenging work. So understanding that and having a good support network is really important.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's something that we're going to hear from a lot of different pilot states, is that it's important to sort of build support throughout the agency, and even look to sort of your colleagues in other states for that sort of motivation and inspiration. And of course, that's what we're trying to do here, today, is show how you've had success and how others of course can replicate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add regarding, what you learned from events at the workshop, or just the process? And could you talk a little bit more about where you see yourself going concretely with this, from this pilot project going forward?
I'll go ahead and throw in that another additional thing. I can't remember if I've mentioned it yet, but we found, because there was such a possibility for misinterpretation or just resistance, having people involved who are really good communicators, like really excellent at meeting people where they were, whether that be our director or a division chief or the participants of the workshops, really trying to, we needed to have excellent communication, and really in explaining what we were trying to accomplish in multiple different ways, so that no matter who you were within our agency trying to understand what we were trying to accomplish, it was explained in a way that you could easily understand. So we talk about this in the report, but we tried multiple times to communicate effectively, and we had to put a lot more work into just communicating what we were trying to do than we originally thought we would need to, because this is difficult work and it's easy to put aside because there's higher priorities. We're all busy. So just going into it knowing that having people involved who are really excellent communicators makes things a lot easier. And then in terms of next steps, we now, as of I think less than a month ago, we now actually have our very first diversity and inclusion program coordinator, who, it's a new position within the agency. We've had a similar position before, but this is a much more powerful position. So they are working with our senior leadership in the agency, and they're going to be coordinating these efforts. So we're really excited to be able to take what we learned from this grant project and the report that we've put together, the evaluations, both pre and post workshop evaluations, to show like what was effective and what wasn't. We can now give all this information to this new coordinator so that he's going to be much more empowered to figure out where we stand as an agency now and what direction we can take to move forward. And we're really eager to figure out how we can support that position, because I think we've learned the hard way, if we didn't already know, that this is not work that one person can or should be doing. It really needs to be divided among really everybody in an agency. So we're excited to be able to provide that position as much support as we can.
Awesome. And it's, from a relevancy roadmap perspective, it's very interesting to see you guys working on the agency culture and doing those workshops, and then adding that new position to add capacity to the agency, person dedicated to that exact field of DEI. So that's very cool. You guys have any last thoughts, Kevin?
I was just gonna highlight what you said there, Lindsay, about the relevancy roadmap and the connections that are within those five. And that as we've worked on this, we see that connection, but then having to nearly pretty much back up and make sure we maintain the focus on those agency culture items, because it would hopefully then empower the constituent culture and capacity as well. And so, yeah, we have great opportunities moving forward. And at the same time, we are continuing to grow ourselves. I think those are the things to remember is in this work, it's opportunity for individuals, working groups, and entire agencies and organizations to really explore their full potential in this work.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And it sounds like, your agency is developing a lot. And I think the materials you all have produced are going to help a lot of folks as well. And maybe they'll get in touch with some of those third parties and read your report and see what they can do themselves. Awesome. Well, I want to say thank you guys so much for sharing all your work in writing and here in the video. And I hope that people can reach out to you on the site with questions about, how to replicate your successes here and how to deal with those challenges.
We'd be happy to talk to anybody who's interested in hearing about our experiences.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay.